After the command line,
Yep. No need just for today, so you guys can like learn Mongo, and then rest of all I'll be done with like the JavaScript and stuff.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So present to everyone. Why do they make this thing so hard? So how do I get the link to this?
Oh, right there on the bottom. On the bottom right.
On the bottom here?
Oh,
Links. Oh yeah. Okay. Where are you, Jackie? Okay. Jackie now has the link. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and start the class today. And I always thought these were really interesting when I was a kid. I would like point the video camera at the TV and just do this for a really long time.
Oh my god.
Anyway, we are going to start class today by talking about our project. So what I'd like to do is I have good feedback to give all of you guys, but I'd like all of you guys to go around the room and say something that you remember about another project that you like. Hi, Alex.
Hey, sorry about Saturday. Like having car troubles.
It happens.
All fixed?
What's that?
All fixed?
Yeah, I got my airbag fixed and the tires.
Your airbag report?
Yeah, there's a recall on the E39 M5, so I have to get my
Oh, you got
on the
to
driver's side.
How do you like it?
Apparently, it's like exploding in people's faces. But yeah, I love it. I've had it since I was 8. It was my dad's car.
Oh, okay.
So it's been
Nice. Nice. I love the old.
yeah, the E39 is a good car.
Wait, it's a BMW, right? Not a Mercedes. Okay, what positive feedback do you have for
What do you mean by feedback?
something nice?
Positive compliments. The Task App team. Wait, where are they? What the heck? Wait, where's the rest of the team? Where's the rest of the task? Dan, were you part of the? Yeah, you were part of the Task App.
Trying to
I
hide
loved
the
it
shadows.
so much. Oh my gosh.
We were talking about it like after.
Yeah, the design and the mock-ups too. So
Yeah,
beautiful.
Adrian put a lot of work into that.
Yeah.
Speaking of which,
There you
There it is! Yay! Good job. Okay, so the Task App team, what was the feedback for the Task App team?
It was so beautiful, from mock-up to actual execution. Very lovely. Yeah, especially considering that you guys didn't use a grid system like Bootstrap.
Okay, what other positive feedback do we have for your friends? No positive feedback?
I like the medicine app. I think it has like a lot of potential. Like if they could even put like telemedicine.
Yeah, that was a good idea.
It's like a really cool idea.
Yeah, and I think those are the best ideas sometimes, the ones where you're like, why are we doing this? It's God of the
There's
way.
a lot of like discussion of we're stopping ourselves from making bigger because the idea is to actually build bigger.
Yeah.
Because it's such a huge industry to actually get into, and there's so much potential for it to actually be very useful.
Right.
And the industry's not that crowded either. I only know of 2 programs that do that.
It's not, yeah, I mean, there's some that you can actually see now, which just give you, there's a lot that just give you doctor's information. That's pretty much it. But there's nothing else to it that links the doctor with the actual patient, which would be really cool. I actually got an idea of a health hackathon in Vegas that happened a couple months ago.
Mhm.
There's a lot of companies that actually want developers to make programs. Fitbit's one of them that they want us to do applications with. So I kind of got the idea from there. It's pretty cool. They got these specific ones for the health industry, which is pretty cool.
Interesting. And then your doctor could see the
That would be the idea where the doctor gets the information from the patient and actually has records with them. So essentially, you kind of do away from the actual like the paper system and have everything electronically technology based. But also it makes it easier to go to different types of doctors because a lot of times you have a referral issue that you have to get something signed or requested from the doctor. Whereas with the program itself, you can just easily have that information.
That's actually really true. We have a lot of doctors, like in my clinic and other clinics, where, like, for example, they'll have like an injection or they have Botox for migraines or something like that, and they have to just, we give them a printout of like to monitor like 2 weeks, 8 a.m. through midnight, like their symptoms, what time they took their meds and stuff, like, and I have to like work for that would be like.
There's so much potential for it. So it's really exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Okay, what other feedback? Feedback.
What was the name? Coin Lab? What's the name?
Coin Lab.
I really love that because it's present and futuristic, like in terms of I really like that was very creative.
Yeah, I think so. I thought that was a really good idea. Lucas here. Is anyone from that team here too? Yay, Matt's and Lucas. Okay, what other feedback? Is Jackie watching? She didn't like the thing. Jackie there.
Oh, the preview, that's what you're.
Jackie!
Wait, does audio get transmitted too, or is it just visual?
Staring at a blank screen.
Last time she couldn't hear the audio.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember one time she mentioned.
Can you select me the link and I'll
Then you
test
were
it out?
able to hear audio
Yeah.
one time you were
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I can hear audio.
I'm gonna paste it in the class.
I am here.
Possibly.
So I'm gonna paste
Jackie, can you?
Jackie can't hear me. Hi, Jackie. I hope you can hear us. We're missing a lot of our friends in class today, but yeah. Well, Saturday was a tough day. I mean, sometimes we have bad days where stuff happens. Yes, we're missing our silent killer. Oh, here's Melvin. Yay! Okay, guys, so let's. Oh, and here's John. Yay! Okay, so we're gonna play the good job game. We're gonna turn to our friends and neighbors and we're just gonna tell each other good job or laugh or energetic. Good job, good job. Oh, really, guys?
Stop, bro.
Good job. Good job, Sam. Good job. Good job. Okay, good job, guys. I'm proud of you. I'm really proud of all the work that you've been doing, all of you. Sorry if my criticism came off a little harsh on Saturday. I felt that I should address that too. It's out of love. It's out of trying to get you guys to master this material because that's what I really care about. And sometimes I don't word things exactly the way I should. I'm up here talking all the time, but I do apologize. Couldn't have said it better. And it's sort of a balancing act. This is what I was just talking about with Siobhan, that we want you guys to get the benefit of the feedback, and we also want to be nice about it and make sure that we're doing it in a respectful way and all of that. So it's something I work on and I acknowledge that. So we are going to get started here with a quick slide presentation. What did Jackie say?
Good job, you guys brought it.
Oh, yeah, good job, Jackie. Awesome job. Y'all don't need memes anymore. Clear positives. You stayed ambitious. They know a lot about you guys. Apparently. You dominated. You didn't make any excuses when you had them. So hopefully some of this lands for you guys. Yeah, I don't think we really need all this feedback. The GitHub readmes, you guys all know about those pretty much by now. Mappy made hers into a biography thing, which I thought was neat.
Oh, yeah, you know.
On your GitHub page. Yeah, and that might be good feedback to share with the class. I thought that was good. Mappy on her GitHub page, she made her README her bio. So that way when potential employers come to her GitHub page, they'll be able to read her bio as well. So that might be a good idea. So then they're saying you can also put in a GIF of your project in case there's somebody who's not a programmer, just a recruiter that's on GitHub looking for you. To be honest, tech recruiters are a dime a dozen. You guys should have no problem like meeting them and finding them. They'll find you and talk to you. So I don't think that's really necessary. Have a dummy guest log in to enter your application. Make it easily apparent on your README. So you guys could think about that too. If you have an application that requires a login, make it so that people can log in, although they'll be installing the database and administrating the database themselves. So that seems a little weird. So write a tutorial, pitch a tutorial to Scotch.io. If you've used any unusual libraries, Scotch.io is a pretty good site. Also, I wanted to talk to you guys about blogging. I think, Gretel, you were talking about writing a blog post at some point, weren't you? Blog post about tech? Weren't we talking about blogging about tech? Blogging, like write an article for your LinkedIn. Yeah. So that's another good thing to talk about. Writing articles will make you stand out. It shows that you're actually able to talk about tech and articulate as well as just do it. So people definitely look at that. I have not written an article about tech yet, but maybe I will. Maybe if enough of you guys do, I will too before the end of the semester.
And to iterate on the README, that's super important for employers. So make sure you update your READMEs on your projects.
Yeah, update your READMEs. What do you think about the GIF thing they suggest? I think that's a little extreme. I think GitHub should be for programmers.
Like say a game I made, I did a little GIF showing the gameplay of it.
Yeah.
It's up to you guys. I mean, as long as you're explaining what your app can do. Because some of these people are not technical, like tech recruiters don't know anything about tech. So.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Alex.
Stuff about tech, dude.
Exactly. Could not have said that better myself. So list all your niche skills on LinkedIn. So what does niche skills mean? I think Martha, we were talking about this, right? Your niche skills. So I was asking you, like, what is it that attracts you to this field? What is it that you like? Because you were asking me, what do I?
To incorporate it, like my experience, real estate. Like,
right.
That would be my niche. So to incorporate,
Corporate. And you sort of found while taking this course, I think you sort of found your
You press the volume button, though, to mute it.
I know.
It's fine.
I don't. Does he have to call or something? Like, I don't know. Anyway, yeah. So you.
I found and I listened and there's new like philosophy that is called Space as a Service, and it's how to incorporate technology into spaces and how like places like WeWork are using technology to disrupt the industry. So
like displays and visualizations and things like that.
It comes from like just data analysis to find out like what the time the people come into the office.
Yeah.
And design the spaces. Okay, how the actual people use them and how to make them more efficient.
Yeah.
So it can be, it's like a range of things, but it goes into data analysis and incorporate everything into spaces.
Yeah, that's great. That is great. And I can tell you have a lot of interesting ideas and sort of novel approaches to things, and I think that's good. At the New York Times, they had the elevator. I mean, their building is like, I don't know, 30 floors or something, and everybody would come in the morning, and they're all going to different floors, so they would press the buttons. And then a software developer that was working there said, well, this is really inefficient. We can use what's called a bin packing algorithm, which is like the most efficient algorithm to get everybody to the place. So they redesigned all of the elevators. They took the buttons off the inside of the elevators and put them on the outside. So before you get in the elevator, you tell it what floor you're going to. Then it just drops everybody off at the right floors in the right order. That's most efficient.
Yeah, I've seen that in the building in Boston as well.
Yeah, they're doing it in more and more places, but that's how it got invented.
Another thing that I have seen, also on the niche,
Mhm.
on the technologies that I thought it was very interesting. There's this British guy, and he was saying that like the iPhone model of business, like iPhone when it started, it wasn't the best phone. Like there were other phones that did more, but an iPhone is still only dominates 18% of the market, but it has 80% of the profit. So because they're not really a phone, it's a camera, it's their music.
Mhm.
They go into services and how the user experience and how to just not think about the code, but also the user experience.
Right. Okay, good. So yeah, any others of you, what would you say your niche is when somebody asks you like what attracts you to tech, what makes it special to you, what makes you special as a candidate? Start thinking about the answer that you're gonna say. And then say, what was that?
He said his notes.
Well, yeah. I mean, let's move on. Okay. So we have a castle of knowledge. There's victory. There's blah, blah, blah. Double down. You have access to me. You have access to the TAs for the next 2 months. Take advantage of this time. Look through the code base. Identify your weaknesses. So all the stuff that we've had so far, you have all of this material. You've reviewed all of this material. You should have a pretty good idea what all of these exercises that we've been doing kind of do and how you would do those things. So you can look through them, see which stuff you don't remember, go over it. Schedule a help session. Put in those hours. This is the absolute best time to learn this material. And I've said that to you guys before, Roberto and Kelvin. I think I said that to you guys before. Like, this is the really best time if you want to like stay up all night and get work done. This is the time to do it. It's not necessarily healthy for you and stuff, but if there's ever time to do it, now this is it. I find that my brain really starts working if I've been working on a project like all night. There's a point where I get to like 2 o'clock in the morning or something, and then everything just like switches, and I'm just like, good. I'm totally wired in and on for. But different people have different working styles, but keep like putting in those hours. That's why they have hackathons. That's why they have all this stuff. Because if you get to the point where you're really, really tired, and then you keep working, there's a point where your brain will actually switch, and then you get really, really good somehow. After that. So, yeah, have you experienced that, Jonathan? Yeah. Alex, has that happened to you? Yeah.
Yeah.
I have not experienced education.
Yeah, no, with code, it definitely happens. We'll get into some code. Yeah, you're not going to start when you graduate. I know lots of you have unfinished homework assignments. I have unfinished homework assignments for my classes that I'm taking. They're easy to let pile up, get them done. Your goals, beginning of the year. I don't know why it's the beginning of the year. To land a solid career and to be able to support a family. So think about your goals. Think about what motivates you to become a software developer. Think about what motivates you to come here every class and deal with me and deal with all these dumb exercises we do. There must be some reason for it, right? I know.
We're masochists. We like pain like that.
Well.
I know, I thought of Jackie as well.
Yes, but you guys get what I'm saying, right? You can do it. Putting in an average of 17 hours per week. Jackie puts in 46 hours a day. So she should be great.
I hope she's here.
I know, I'm like, is she?
She's here in spirit.
Yes. Okay, so what is Mongo, guys? We get to learn about Mongo. What is Mongo? What did she say?
She says, I like pain.
Okay, what is Mongo, guys?
It's a very popular NoSQL database.
Good job, Jim. Yeah, it is. Awesome work. Okay, what else is it?
It uses a document-oriented model as opposed to a table-based relational model.
Wow.
SQL. Great job, Melvin. You can set up yourself. Okay, number 3, somebody.
Stores data in the BSON format.
BSON format. So we talked about BSON format before. Does anyone remember what it is?
I feel like it's a compressed JSON.
It is binary JSON. So data usually works better as binaries. That's why most low-level languages like C are always compiled into binaries. So what happened was JSON was sort of discovered as an emergent property of JavaScript at Yahoo in the early 2000s, and people decided, wow, this is a really great data format. We could use this for making databases and a lot of things. But the problem is MySQL and a lot of other databases store the data as binaries because it's a lot more efficient. It's a lot faster at the base processing kind of levels. JSON is more efficient at the high-level software development kind of level. So they invented a binary version of JSON, which kind of is the best of both worlds. MongoDB has tons of drivers and packages for connecting to Node, C++, if you guys want to start doing some C++ development in Qt framework. That used to be terrible, but you can. Okay, so here's the relational database stuff that we were learning about in the last weeks. You guys remember all of this, how this stuff relates to each other. We have these complicated relationships. Jose isn't here, but he had a pretty good one. Sam, you did a good job with the relational stuff too, and it gets complicated, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so with Mongo, it makes it simpler because we're just using a regular JSON data format. This should be pretty familiar to all of you guys right now, right? How JSON works, we have the 5 primitive data types in JavaScript, remember that. And then in addition to that, there are objects and their arrays. And that's pretty much it. And with these very simple data structures, we can store data in all kinds of very interesting ways where it's really easy to work with and to manipulate when compared to something like SQL.
Could you go back really quick once? I just wanted you guys to see how there's like 2 tables there, like, you know, where it says the author, it points to an author table. If you go back to the next one, the Mongo one, the author is embedded within that first object. So there's an object within an object. I want you guys to see that because that's how NoSQL is going to translate from SQL.
Yeah, that's a good point, Jonathan. So you can have objects inside of objects. Another thing that's an advantage of having a document store instead of a table structure is that you can have whatever fields you want. So like one of these records we have might have, and as well as a title, there might be a byline or something as well as the author. So that would mean this record could have the byline field and this one wouldn't. If we do that in the world of SQL, that means we have to add an extra column. So then every record has to take up memory for that extra column. With JSON, you can just add whatever fields you want to whatever record you want. So it's better for that reason. In addition, you can have objects within inside of objects. You can have arrays within inside of arrays. You can have arrays within objects. You can have objects within arrays. You can mix these different things together any way you want to.
It can bite you in the back later because if, for example, you have like title, right, and it's a string, and then you put in like a number or something that isn't string, later on, if someone needs to parse through that, or if you're parsing through it, you're going to get an error parsing through it because one of them is not a string. NoSQL will not error out. Mongo will not error out if you have a string and then you do a number for another one. You can change the data. There's no data type. There's no set data type. Like in SQL, SQL will error out. It'll say incorrect data type or something like that. Mongo won't. So just be careful with that.
And what about dates?
Dates, you can use dates.
Yeah.
JavaScript dates.
Mm-hmm.
Just JavaScript?
Yeah, but typically people would put like a timestamp or something like that, I think, instead of a JavaScript date. There are different needs for different types of applications. Mongo doesn't just work with JavaScript, it also works with Java, C++, so there they would want to use Java date and save it as like a timestamp or something like that. Usually when you're saving a date in a database, the most common format to do it is a timestamp. So that's usually the best way, and then you manipulate it on the application logic level. This is a data storage level, so we want to separate those two things, application logic and data. So it's best to just do those. Did you guys notice Jonathan wore his MongoDB shirt today?
Yeah.
Is that on purpose?
Yeah.
Okay. So MongoDB storage. Here's a database composed of multiple collections. So we've all seen like arrays of objects, like when you guys got the JSON responses and your APIs and stuff, we'd have an array of objects. Like it might be an array of Giphy GIFs or an array of CDC diseases or whatever it is. Does this make sense? An array of objects? You guys all know what I mean when I say array of objects? Yes? No? Yes? Yeah? Everybody? Yeah? Okay. So in Mongo, an array of objects is called a collection. It is really just that, an array of objects. We just work on it as a collection. You guys have seen something very similar to this already when working with Firebase. Firebase also lets you have collections of objects. Firebase is actually very similar to Mongo. Here's a collection composed of multiple documents as well. So you can have multiple collections. Like say, what was the database schema for your product? So you had the patients, and then you had.
Yeah, so without the data schema was for the actual doctor itself.
Mm-hmm.
So it had writer information, the actual name, title. They had the addresses and also insurances that they actually take.
Okay, so you had a provider table, an insurance table.
Yeah, there was quite a few.
Yeah, so in Mongo, I mean, a table pretty much translates directly to a collection in Mongo, in most cases. So here you would have a patient collection, you would have an insurance collection if those were your tables in SQL.
We had, it's easy to actually, because they had the example of choosing the field.
Mm-hmm.
So exactly what you want to choose from, that's when I put up the JSON. You would put the field and the actual portion of the field that you want as well. So it made it easier to like, they set it up for you within that API. It's easy to work with. Realizing it's similar to this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, and we'll get to see more of this stuff. So we're going to see how these terms translate. Although they don't translate exactly, these translations will work most of the time. You'll be pretty much safe saying this. So in SQL, we say database. In NoSQL, which is mostly Mongo. So we should talk for a minute about NoSQL. So this idea of getting rid of tables and having document stores instead and having a JSON-like structure came about, I would say, probably around like 2009, 2010 or so. Is that about right? And so there are a few different products that are competing. Mongo is pretty much the most popular now. There's another one that's called CouchDB. That's kind of similar. Have you used that, Jonathan? It's kind of similar. It's pretty much the same thing. There's another one called Redis, which is more of a caching layer. It's called Redis because it was invented at Reddit. And that is a more simpler thing. A lot of times people will use Mongo and Redis together. And so the reason they do that is they have Redis as a caching layer, meaning that if you have a really big MongoDB, it takes time to get the records out and go find the records that you want. So the records that get used a lot get saved in Redis as a caching layer, and then Redis can get flushed, all that stuff gets deleted. Your data is still in Mongo, but then it gets pushed to Redis so you can get it more quickly out of Redis. You guys get how that works? So that's a type of architecture you'll see sometimes. So other examples of NoSQL, can you think of any? There's Hadoop. Hadoop is a really big, complicated NoSQL system that is mostly used for very big data mining and data processing tasks. It was developed at Google, and Yahoo developed it together.
Say Firebase.
Firebase, yeah, the Firebase database, because there are multiple products that make up Firebase. But yeah, the Firebase database is
Dynamo.
NoSQL.
Did you see Dynamo?
Dynamo, no.
DynamoDB is part of AWS. They have their own NoSQL database.
Right. So all these systems are pretty similar. They all, instead of using tables, they basically don't use tables. You can sort of like a free-for-all. You can make your data in pretty much any structure you want it to. So we're going to have a quick activity. You're going to work with your neighbors to research the following. What are the advantages of using a NoSQL database like MongoDB according to the MongoDB website? What are the advantages of using a NoSQL database like MongoDB according to the web, places like Quora? What are the disadvantages of using a NoSQL database like MongoDB according to the web? Oh yeah, have you guys ever seen this movie?
I love that movie.
Labyrinth.
The what?
It's called Labyrinth with David Bowie. It's really weird. It has the actress from that movie Requiem for a Dream, if you've ever seen that, which is like a little girl. It's a really, really weird movie. Like, Really, I don't think I can even think of a more bizarre movie.
Labyrinth.
Yeah. Yeah, not
It's
Pan's
so much
Labyrinth.
It's real good.
It's
So much better. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, all right, friends. Talk amongst yourselves.
Sorry.
How much time do we have for this, Jonathan?
Oh, they have it on.
Quick, is that quick activity? Or what is Mongo? That may be what of that's 15 minutes.
15 minutes.
Oh, it's quick. Just kidding. That's fun.
I don't know who Jackie's going to talk to.
I had queries that could see those
Oh, you're reading on Atlas. That's another thing.
I just picked the first one.
Yeah, there's a community edition. Right, you have to go to 3.6 Make sure you're looking at normal Mongo, not Atlas or Compass.
Yeah,
3.6.
There are just so many versions.
Yeah. Sequel. I guess sequel is sequel.
Okay, how are you guys feeling with that? You want to take some more time? You think you got all the questions answered? Everyone?
So we don't need to define like port, username, and password with Mongo that we do for MySQL?
Yes, you do. Yeah, and we'll get into the code examples that show you how to do that and everything. It's a good question. Yeah, you connect to it pretty much the same way. It's a different protocol, but in terms of putting it into your app, it's all the same stuff. The server address, host name, port number, all that stuff. Pedro, yay! Good job, Pedro.
By default, I think you're using your localhost port 20.
Yeah, it's saying 27.0.17.
That one, yeah, that's your default.
Yeah, because in the example where they're showing like how you would connect using JavaScript, I'm not seeing like any
Port, yeah.
Yeah, we'll get to that, and there are libraries that actually make it easier too. So, yeah, we're going to be using one called Mongoose, I think. Okay, how are we feeling with that, guys? Did we answer these 3 questions? No? Yes, maybe? You want more time? And I mean, if you don't, if you can't teach a class in Mongo after this next 5 minutes, that's okay, because we'll cover it again. How much more time do we have with that, Jonathan? Yeah, let's bring that to a close. Any questions on the stuff you read? Anything you saw that interested you? Anything at all you'd like to share?
So if we were to be asked in an interview, like, what's the advantages and disadvantages of a NoSQL database and a SQL database, like, what are the top answers that we should provide to potential?
Okay, so the answers are what we just said. NoSQL databases have less structure. There's no tables. For that reason, you can have your data structured in different ways. You can have different fields and different records without using the extra memory to make columns for each of those records you need if you're not using them in all of the records. That's one thing. It's easier to have relationships and have relational data because there's no relation. It's easier to write queries. It works better with Node, basically. Because it's JavaScript, the queries in Mongo are written in JavaScript. Kind of similar to some of the filter functions and stuff that I've been showing you guys. That's how the queries in Mongo work.
So then, in which case scenarios would a company choose to work with a SQL database versus no SQL database?
Okay.
I still know companies that use just.
Yeah, oh yeah, a lot of companies still use SQL. There's a lot involved in that decision. It isn't easy. A lot of it comes down to people doing things the way they're used to doing things because they know they work. So that's one reason for it. Another reason for it is that sometimes even data scientists who tend to favor these types of things because they're quicker will like to use SQL for certain things because there's a certain way that they write the SQL queries that works for them when they do relational algebra. So really good data scientists who work with this stuff all the time will use both, and they go back and forth between them, and there's like, oh, there's this weird little thing that I can do in SQL, and then I can do more stuff in Mongo. Mongo can also hold more data. It's easier to cluster and it scales up really, really well. So you can just keep having more and more virtual machines out in the cloud somewhere that are running Mongo, and they all connect to each other. They can replicate, so if one goes down, it's replicated somewhere else. That's what you call a sharded instance of Mongo, where each shard is a separate virtual machine, and then they're clustered together, and then they work together. And then there are what are called replicator sets, which are sets of copies. In case you lose the data on one, you'll have copies of it somewhere else.
So they're going back.
Yeah. So it's easier to run Mongo in a clustered environment. That's another good answer. So it scales up better.
Thank you.
No problem. Good question. Okay, there's David Bowie. Hi, David Bowie. Time to code. Okay, let's see what we have here for you. Jonathan, would you mind queuing up the... Yeah, sure, Nelson.
If it's not a non-relational database, how are the collections related one to each other?
Okay, so that's a good question. How are the collections related one to each other? Well, first of all, you could put the object inside your other object, so you could just have objects inside of objects, so they could be related to each other that way. Then it also does have the construct for foreign keys, so you can have them linked to each other using foreign keys. So Mongo does have foreign keys the same way that SQL does. But you'll use them less, and you kind of use them in a different way. But we're going to look at that.
You don't need to have a one-to-one relationship with anything. You can just
I think it's not even an option.
make it as an object within an object.
Well, in Mongo, you reference stuff. You reference other collections.
Okay.
You can do it both ways. You can put an object within an object if you want to, if that's what makes sense for you. If you're going to be using it somewhere else too, and you just want to reference it, then you can reference it. And there's a foreign key object in Mongo that lets you do that. And then there's also a primary key object.
It depends, I think, is how big your data is going to be. Like in certain cases, it'll be better for you to have embedded documents, so like a document within a document. Or in the other case, it'll be better for you to like reference other documents. So it depends. I can look that up for you and then I'll get back to you. But I know there's certain scenarios when you want to use one and when you want to use the other.
Okay, Jonathan, could you help John show, please, with the MongoDB download?
Yeah, I think now we're actually going to get into installing it.
Yeah, okay, so
So
we'll
just
help you
slack
out.
out.
So you slacked out those instructions. Jackie, if you can hear us, I'm going to switch over to my other computer and then I'll set up the webcast again.